There is a moment in every life when you decide to rise, to stand taller than your fear, to speak louder than your doubt, to chase the vision that sets your soul on fire. This is that moment, and here we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire, and truths that set you free. This is Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where hope has a voice, and that voice is yours. And welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a great show for you. As a matter of fact, Rochelle, we have a series of great shows today.
We actually do. And we get to start the first one off strong. We have Michelle Wexelblat here with us today. She is a Jewish priest, has a website if you're curious. Go to therapyden.com, where she helps work with people and connect them to their true selves. So welcome, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm going to make a minor correction. And it cut off because I added name and it's priestess. It is very specifically in the feminine.
Okay.
Very good. For those of us who have no earthly idea what a Jewish priestess is, could you kind of enlighten me a little bit? Because I honestly don't know.
Okay. If you go back and you read your Bible, you will see little mentions of where women had jobs to do around the temple and around community temples. And you get little snippets. Now, this is, you don't get a full visual of it because at the time of King Josiah, he decided that for political reasons, it made a good idea to consolidate power and to do it in a masculine patriarchal way, and worked very hard on removing all of the previous worship of and work that Jewish priestesses did, and the worship of the feminine divine, which sometimes is called Asherah, Shekhinah, sun, light, all sorts of things. It's got many, many names, but you don't see it very much. Back in the, pardon me, I have a friend. Because he is so excited to join us.
Hi, Sirius.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's not like anybody's stomach was gurgling. That was him saying, "Mom, I want up."
This is my coworker. His name is Sirius. He is with me all the time. There is a group that is called Kohenet, and the practice of Kohenet. Many of you are familiar with the last name Cohen.
Yeah.
Cohen in Hebrew means priest. Kohenet is priestess. And there is a Kohenet movement which is working on reclaiming and finding those things for what was the worship and the devotions and work that women did in the temples.
Yeah, because I remember in my reading of the Bible that there were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were all men, and it was a very masculine-dominated society at the time.
Yep. Yes.
But that's not how it always was. No.
There was a time in which Judaism was a multi-gender worship. And we talk about how we look at God and God being not gendered in one way, and that in looking at the verbs, that the name that is used, sometimes it's feminine, sometimes it's masculine, sometimes it's neutral. But a lot of the pre-consolidation to a monotheistic religion, there was a lot of work in feminine worship and trying to rebuild what that was. And that goes back to a pre-rabbinic time of Judaism. That goes back to the time of the temples and living as tribes. And so there was a lot of that back then. Very much more of a indigenous shamanic work, because everybody had their own connection to the divine. And that is something that Jews still maintain today, is that there is nobody who has to stand between them and their conversations with God. You don't have to go to a rabbi to get forgiveness. You don't have to go to somebody to be your conduit. you can sit down and have a conversation, and your relationship with God is your relationship with God.
And indeed, why do you think it is? And I know you've probably done some studying on this, but the Catholics have got the same problem in that the priests have to be all men, and that's why they call them father and stuff. But where do you think that we as a society went wrong when we decided that was it men's insecurity that caused them to say, "Oh no, we're the ones in charge," and the women can be nuns or they can be priestesses, but they can't be at the same level as the men. Why do you think that is?
So now I'm going to put on my social worker hat. And I am a licensed independent clinical social worker, master's in social work. I've been a clinician in private practice for almost 15 years now. Before that, I worked in community mental health in inner city communities. And that has put me in, and I do a lot of work with the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus community. And with inner city communities and multiracial and everything, what you wind up with is a lot of trauma. Now, when I say trauma, I'm not meaning capital T trauma, though that is in there, but also neglect, long-term issues, poverty, institutionalisms and biases, and adverse life experiences. That's the term that I like to use, is we all have adverse life experiences. I talk about you can't buy a new car and drive it for more than a year or 2 years before you pick up scratches and dents and rock, mess and dirt. Why do we think we can go through life without the same?
I don't know, because we can't.
And so lots of people will not admit or believe that they have had adverse life experiences. And like your car, they don't believe that they need tune-ups either. That they're just fine. And only when they get to the point of something breaking, though some people do that with their cars too, do they actually and get stuff taken care of. So putting on my clinician hat, my social worker hat, I like to look at systems. And social workers are very big systems theorists. And if you go back to the start of humankind, it was survivalist. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of that, and a lot of lack of control. And a lot of lack of control and powerlessness leads us to this pendulum to where we are either having enough or we have scarcity. And scarcity mindset causes people to do a lot of things that are not good on a community level. We each wind up as an individual worried about what our scarcity models are going to be. And if you go back through time, you've got lots of people who are trying to make sure that they have enough, but it's very egocentric. And if you go and you look through time, it is very much trauma-based, and it's around power and control. And for me, what I believe happened is that at some point there was a decision made that only the learned folks, meaning people connected with God and priests and nuns and stuff, were allowed to be educated, because it was much easier to control an uneducated populace.
Which is why there was a time not too long ago where Bibles were very scarce, and they were considered the domain of the fathers and the priests, right, and that the masses would take their word for it, and because they didn't have access to the information themselves. Am I right?
Yep. And if you go along further in history, forwards to the King James Bible, that is very much a political crowdsourced document. He hired people to write particular pieces of it in order to send the messages that King James wanted to have in the forefront. So with each iteration and with each people writing it, and backwards with each people writing it and recording what pieces of history that they wanted, you get particular biases. But really, what I think about where things went wrong is that none of this is looking at repair. We go from traumatized to traumatizing others and back and forth. Hi, look at this. Okay.
What you got in your hand, Ma? Yeah.
You can have a treat.
Oh my gosh, my mom does the same thing. Share the apple with the dog.
I go to the farmer's market and I get an apple and I have this complete undivided attention until it is all gone. So repair. Judaism has a system in it for repentance and repair. And we go through this every year between the New Year and our major day of repentance, Yom Kippur. And really, this is a thing that lots of people don't understand about this, is that we start and say our repentance prayers the Sabbath before Yom Kippur. That's when we do our repentance. And by the time we are doing services for Yom Kippur, what we're actually asking for forgiveness for are the mistakes we are going to make for next year. That God recognizes us as fallible humans, and that we start working on asking for forgiveness and strength in order to help us get through the next year.
Michelle, I have to ask you, backing up a little bit, were you born into this, or was this something that you slowly found yourself more in tune with, and it just built over the years?
So I was born into a Jewish household. My mother is a Holocaust survivor. Her short version story is she left occupied Belgium at age 6 with her sister and parents, walked to occupied Marseille, got smuggled out of occupied Marseille to occupied Morocco. From occupied Morocco, they wound up in Cuba, and they spent 6 months in a concentration camp in Cuba. Most people don't know there were concentration camps in Cuba. And then she finally got released. They all got released to the Jewish community in Havana. And from there, they got a visa to Mexico. And she grew up in Mexico City until she was 16, when she finally got a visa to come up to New York and live with relatives. And
Wow.
When is her book coming out?
Got married at 18, had her first kid at 19.
When is her book coming out? Because that's quite a story.
Unfortunately, my mom passed away in 2007. Her parents did some recordings that my uncle, I think, uploaded to the Spielberg Library of Holocaust Stories. Steven Spielberg has been doing a lot to document Holocaust survivor stories. Wow. And so we got some recordings of them talking about their experiences. I have some from my great aunt. But my dad was a third generation New Yorker. He came from that area of Lithuania that kept changing hands. So we have no documents or history, but he came over. He was third generation and was old enough to actually serve in World War II. And he was in the Coast Guard in the South Pacific.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
A lot of
I didn't know the Coast Guard went to the South Pacific in World War II, but I suppose it makes sense.
Do you remember seeing the movie Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
So Mr. Roberts is an old movie. You'll tell Rochelle about it later, where it is a Navy cargo ship whose job it was to go around and give food to the soldiers. And the movie describes this very boring experience and all the shenanigans they would get into because they were so bored. And my dad would say that the only thing more boring than being that ship was the Coast Guard cutter that was guarding the carrier, the supply carrier. So that's what the Coast Guard did. And he enlisted at 17. He chose where to go at 17 so that he didn't get enlisted at 18 and wound up cannon fodder. And so he made it.
Help me, I don't understand why I know this, but Henry Fonda was yes. in that movie.
Correct.
Which I don't, do you know who Henry Fonda was, Rochelle? Because younger people won't.
Honestly, I the name and the movie themselves sound familiar, but couldn't put a face to it.
Are you familiar with Jane Fonda?
Yes, I've heard that one.
That is his daughter.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
And Peter
she
Fonda
came from a long line of performers.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, but
Didn't know
so in any event, just another thing of useless information that I have. By the way, we're talking with.
So you had asked me about whether I'd been born into this. So my parents were not very Orthodox, but wanted to make sure I got a good Jewish education. So I went to Orthodox school in New York City through elementary and middle school. And I chose to go through to an Orthodox high school as well. You got down. It was your choice.
I want more apple, Mom. And while you're giving Sirius a piece of apple, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll return with Michelle, and her last name, Michelle, is
Wexelblat. It is Wexelblat. Go check her out on social media. There's lots to see.
We'll be right back. Here's another point to ponder from Positive Talk Radio. What is the easiest thing to justify? It is a small transgression. The one no one will ever see, no one will ever know. The tiny exaggeration on the expense report. The extra minute you took on your lunch break. The packaging you tossed in the wrong recycle bin because it was closer. In those moments, the question isn't, will I get caught? The question is, will I know? It isn't about avoiding punishment. It's a silent agreement you make with yourself when you choose to do the right thing. To return the wallet. To fix the mistake. To respect the empty space. You aren't impressing the world. You're earning your own respect. That small choice, made entirely in private, is how you build a life you never have to look away from. The only audience that matters is you. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Rochelle is here, she's here and so apparently, anyway, and Michelle was, Wexenblatt is with us.
Wexel, not Wexen. Wexel.
Wexel. Well, I keep adding syllables to
It's fun. We keep a list of how many different ways people have misspelled and miswritten the name through the family. Wexelblat is my married name, and it is a unique last name. If you come across it, we are all related, no matter how it's spelled. And
So do tell. You started out in a Orthodox Jewish family, and
I started out in a conservative Jewish family, going to Orthodox school, and I had a breaking of the ways with the Orthodox community when my peers decided that me behaving outwardly and showing that I was doing the right things was more important than how do we treat each other as humans.
Gotcha.
And so I left that particular very showy community that you have to be behaving and looking like you were doing the right thing, as opposed to being the right sort of person and being a good person. And I went through life and I did a number of things. I was a street mom in Colorado, helping with runaways for a little while. Came back to the East Coast because Denver is a desert and I'm an ocean creature and I couldn't live there very long. And in coming back and going and looking at graduate school, I went through a number of particular things, but I've always known that I was going to be some sort of therapist. I did it as an undergrad. They had at Queens College, they had a peer advising program, students counseling other students. And so I got to spend a year and a half doing active counseling, and yes, that said, this is what I wanted to do. But it took me a while to get to grad school. And I decided on social work because I could do everything I wanted to do, including teach, with a 2-year degree, which I was doing part-time because I had 2 small kids, and that was 3 years, as opposed to the PsyD that I was looking at, which is a doctorate in clinical psychology, as opposed to a PhD, which is more research-based. And that would have been 7 years part-time. plus another 2 years supervised before I could get my independent licensure. So this was 3 years plus 2 years, got my independent licensure. And then within 2 years after that, I was in private practice.
Well, and you, as a social worker, you're where the rubber meets the road, as it were.
I almost wore my Star Wars theme NESW shirt on camera, but I wanted to talk about more than just social work. But that's where I got my grounding in things.
And then you became a shaman, and then that is that. Go ahead.
What I've been born into. I've been doing this my whole life. I've been talking to plants, talking to animals, speaking with the dead, seeing things that other people don't see. Yes. Knowing things that I have no idea how I know them. And this is the thing about shaman, and that in some East Asian and East Asian languages, the word shaman means one who knows. And so it is tuning into that intuition of hearing what is being communicated through what we call non-ordinary reality. Mm-hmm. We have our ordinary reality that we live in here, where the spirits and ghosts and whatever it is that you believe in, that you talk to, that you hear, exist in as a non-ordinary reality. If you've never owned a pit bull, this is the pit bull. Pit bulls must have their scratches. It is a command. If you do not do it, you are the worst dog parent ever. And so it is the chest scratches. They are very, very important.
You know, just as an aside, I used to believe, because this is what I'd always been told. I'd never been around pit bulls, and then you hear stories of people being attacked by pit bulls and stuff. Mm-hmm. They are, without a doubt, the most loving, caring type of dog that I've ever been around. Yes. They really are something. And
my traumatized lab pointer mix was more scary and more dangerous to other people. And everybody thinks labs are fun. No, she was way too enthusiastic, and no, she had more aggression than this one does. This one, when something is aggressive, steps back and sits.
Yeah,
that's the way he did.
Michelle, I have to share with you, and if you ask me, I think little dogs, like just the basic Chihuahua, is a lot more aggressive. Oh, yeah. But I love what you said about labs, because I say that and people think that I'm having, of course, it's my own opinion, but I do think it's true. My mom found out she was pregnant with me because she was attacked by a lab who was malnurtured, and they took her blood and fixed her up and said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to have a baby." So I guess there was a
whole other rant that I have about testing people without consent.
That's another.
And that's kind of the next place that I wanted to go to, if people are okay with that.
Yeah. Sure. Well, and I love how you say that the shamanism is connecting to everything that's alive.
Everything that's alive.
I do that just every day. And it's just like the dog. If we're not trained correctly, like any animal, we act out. If animals go through trauma, they have the same response as a human does, but they can't communicate that. And even in times, I'm realizing that humans themselves can't communicate it because they don't understand it. So when you start working with somebody, is there like how does that first process usually go with them? Do you just get to know them and how they are and what they've been through?
No. In 2011, I started my certificate in EMDR, eye movements desensitization and reprocessing. It's a type of trauma therapy. And in it is very, very strongly consent-based. That you work with people and their systems when people are ready to do their trauma work. You don't push it. You don't, even the way you do your intake, you don't have people open up all of the boxes of their trauma stories on intake, and then they leave, and then they're tripping over trauma boxes and they feel horrible after their first session, and then they don't come back. No, there's a protocol for how you ask people questions, how you get them to talk about their past, so that they don't leave the session re-traumatized. So starting from that, it really changed my mental model about treatment. And I start my connection with people with a free 20-minute meet and greet after a couple of email exchanges or a phone call. And the idea is that I want people to interview me. I
Mhm.
want to neutralize that power dynamic, because normally we go to an expert, and the expert is supposed to know and fix us. This is not how this goes. I want to equalize this power dynamic such that people feel empowered in their own healing.
Yeah.
People feel empowered to look at me and say, no, you've gotten it wrong. You're on the wrong line.
And I love that about your work as you describe it, because you openly admit, yet even though your puppy dog thinks that you're practically perfect in every way, you admit that you're not perfect in every way,
No.
and that
I tell this to people that I get things wrong, and you need to tell me.
Yeah, and it's okay.
It's okay. I also tell people that they don't have to disclose anything to me they're not ready to disclose. That trust is built over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it like for people, and when you see them realize that they are learning that they do have full access and control of their healing journey, and they don't need to have somebody else do it for them, in the sense of, like you said?
Some people, I see a difference with ethnicities and different cultures that come in. And I would recommend to anybody who's in the field, go and do a whole bunch of cultural competency things and learn about other cultures and talk to clinicians that treat their own communities. I've worked with clinicians from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cambodia, Brazil, BIPOC communities, all sorts, to pick up from them what they do for best practices for working within their own communities, so that I can do the right thing. I also have taught for the National Association of Social Workers on working with the LGBTQIA plus community, on how to look at life, gender, sexuality, communication, all of it on a spectrum, and that we have the conversations, the same conversations I would have with LGBTQI plus people, within those communities, as you do with anybody else. Because it's just a spectrum.
They're still a person.
Still a person. Don't exotify them.
Yeah.
Now, Michelle, during the course of this show, I would like to touch on some of those issues, because I think there's a real misunderstanding, certainly in the United States, among some people, about what exactly we're talking about, and the entire subject of DEI and taking care of each other, and accepting people for who they are, and all of that, because that's a big deal, and we need to get over a lot of that, don't you think?
I think that's where we go back to what I was talking about earlier around repair. And that when we are feeling from a scarcity mindset, we are worried about other people taking resources away from us. And that's been the big buzzwords around everything around DEI, is that these people are getting special rights or special things, when really what we're trying to do is to level the playing field. But there's a phrase that says that when you are used to privilege, equity feels like disempowerment.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're used to being up here and we're trying to level this field, then this group feels like they've been disempowered. And that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
It is, but there's a lot of fear around it,
Is a lot of
because
fear. Yes.
they are scared of the other, because the other's going to either take their job, take their girlfriend, take their money, and stuff, because it doesn't make any sense, other than there are people that will play on that. You were in the very beginning of the show, we were talking about money and power, and
Yep.
and that is one of the things that is being used to create the difference between people, so that a certain segment can maintain and grow their power. Does that make any sense?
It does. That goes back to that scarcity mindset.
Mm.
Because when you feel that there is a scarcity, and this is where we come from carrying intergenerational trauma. In shamanism, we talk about how doing that core healing work heals 7 generations in either direction. We heal 7 generations back of intergenerational trauma that we are still carrying and heal for our ancestors. And we heal 7 generations forward, because if we make the change to do the healing within ourselves, we make things better for future generations.
And Michelle, you couldn't be more accurate. And Michelle is one of those who's making that 7-generation switch because of what has gone on in her past. And can we talk about that a little bit when we come back, about healing the past, which then heals the future, which is a novel concept in itself until you think about it. Then it's like, well, no kidding. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
So we need to take a break, and we'll be right back right after this. We're talking with Michelle
Wexelblat. She does have a website that is up if you have questions and want to find out a little more. You can go to therapyden.com and see some of the cool therapy that she's doing with many, many people. So thank you for being here, Michelle, and we'll be back to talk more on Kevin's idea.
We'll be right back. Stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Are you looking for your daily dose of inspiration? Stay connected to all your favorite shows, music, and news with the Brushwood Media Network app. From Positive Talk Radio to Greatest Vibes Unplugged and so many more uplifting voices around the world, everything you need is right in one place. It's easy to use, too. Always available and designed to keep you inspired 24 hours a day. Go to brushwoodmedianetwork.com and download the app, and you will always have Brushwood Media available on your smartphone. Download it now and make inspiration and music and conversation part of your everyday. And welcome back, everybody. My name is Kevin, and Michelle's right there. By the way, Greatest Vibes Unplugged is the music show that we also do on the Brushwood Media Network, and that's at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday Eastern Time. So tune into that. We've got some great stuff going on there. But today we've got a great guest who is very... I would say, Michelle, that you are very versed in where the rubber meets the road, where people actually live and they exist, and all the trauma and the things that that overcome us from being able to live our best lives. Would that be true? And generational healing is a huge aspect of that, because it goes back generationally, and then but once that is changed, then it can change the future generations. Is that, Michelle, is that what, are you consciously trying to do that, or is that just kind of happening?
I think before it was just like, oh, this is going to happen no matter what I do. But now I've fully accepted it. It is a very heavy thing to take on, because you take on more than just yourself. And once you start doing your internal work and you start to figure out who you are and why that is, that's when the other things come up. That's when I was just sharing with Kevin, Michelle, I'd love to tell you that one thing I've been good at that made no sense to me up until about a week ago was bowling. I'm very good at bowling. I absolutely love it. I have no idea why, since I was very young. And I just learned that my great grandma actually was a professional bowler. And I now have her earrings that she won from a bowling match that are little pins. And so it's things like that that continuously kind of come up in my life. But I won't say that it's not heavy. And it is harder than just living in your own little reality and scrambling around the world, because you're conscious of more than just yourself. But I shared this on Facebook, and I want your opinion. It said, you think you're behind, but your bloodline has waited centuries for someone like you to finally wake up. And that's kind of what it feels like, is like all of those things happened until me, because I'm supposed to break that into something else by accepting it and loving it at the same time, because everybody else would have more tried to just run from it, I think. So what is your perspective on all that, Michelle?
One, I want to find the ancestor who gave me my skill at axe throwing. I went to one of those axe throwing places for the first time, and I apparently am very good at axe throwing, and I have no idea who and where that came from, but I'm really good
awesome.
at it. As far as that way, some people call it, you'll hear it called shadow work, ancestry work. And now imagine if not just you, but if you have other relatives and each of you had taken a piece of this work prior to you being born, you would not be holding this load to having been waited for to start this process.
How do you mean that exactly?
So I'm going to give you an analogy. Are you familiar with the Buddhist priest Thich Nhat Hanh?
Yes, I've heard that.
You've heard that name. May you rest in peace. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book that made a huge change in my life in college, and it's called Peace is Every Step. It was how I learned mindfulness. And in it, he talked about back in those days, we had telephones that rang. And he said when he calls somebody, the bell is his reminder to breathe. So when he called somebody, he would listen to the chimes of the ringing of the phone, and he would breathe. And he would stay in the mindset that as long as it would take for the other person to answer, he was imagining them breathing and calming and being in peace, so that then you were both in synchronicity when you actually picked up that phone and made that call. I see this the same way as ancestral healing. If we are each doing our bit, our interactions then each come from a more healed place. But because we have been living in a survivalist mentality, not a thriving mentality, that we go from injured to injuring others with no repair in between, no making things better, no finding common ground to fix the things that prevent being in the same place the next time. It takes until one of us hits the point and says, no, this is important, and I don't want to be carrying these burdens, and I don't want to pass them on to the next generation to make that decision.
That makes sense. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That spun my brain around a little bit, so I'll have to embody what that is.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because, well, let me ask you, Michelle, was she predestined before she even got here to be the catalyst for change within her family? Or is that something that she's picked up over time? Or how does that process work? How does she know that? And is it, and as an example, her grandmother has passed, but her grandmother is very important to her in her life. Does that mean that her grandmother is now saying, you are the catalyst for change, being a young woman who can do the things that can lead to generational change, and she's getting help from the other side? Or
I think that's open for all of us.
Yeah. Well, and Michelle, I have to tell you, she told me that I would be the person that would change the dynamic of our family while she was still here. It was almost like she knew that it was almost like she knew that she was the last of what that string would bring, and my mom was the middle of it. And she knew that it took that between her and my mom and me, because she used to tell me that, and I still think about it. Like,
may I ask
how did she even mean that?
When she started telling you that? May I ask how old you were when she started telling you that?
Honestly, she told me that at quite an early age. Both of my grandmas, I was one of the first, for one of them, I was the firstborn granddaughter, or grandchild in general. So I'm kind of at the top and the older when it comes to all of the family, and I don't have siblings, which I think is kind of weird. But through my life, the way she phrased it was different, but it started before I really even knew what she was actually saying, if that makes sense.
So there are a number of things that could be going on, and I don't know enough of your story or anything, but for the most part, it is a thing where I would ask the spirits that I work with about why you, in this case. I'm going to put the different hats on.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the clinical hat. The clinical hat says that you were indoctrinated into intergenerational responsibility of eldest woman of your generation. That is your job now to pick up this mantle and do this, especially as I've seen my daughter has failed to pick it up. I am now passing it on to you, and I'm going to indoctrinate you and parentify you from a very young age into taking responsibility for the family trauma.
That makes sense.
Okay. So that is one.
Okay.
From a priestess, Jewish priestess lineage, where we look at this, how we learn the tools and how we learn to be this is often from family members. And it was a thing that got passed down from woman to woman. This is how you know. This is how you pay attention. This is how you listen. These are the things that I see about you to empower you. And these are things that you are capable of doing. And let me remind you of what your power is. And in each generation, there is from the words of our fathers, the Pirkei Avot, you are not required to finish the work, nor are you allowed to put it down. You are not required to finish it, but you still need to do the work. And this is a thing that we believe in. And so that gets passed on from generation to generation. How do you pass on values? How do you teach people morals? How do you help them build their foundation?
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense because I attract a lot of other people that I meet, or a lot of friends that are also doing that and have had that experience. And sometimes it makes it harder because as you learn differently, you learn different levels, there's different trends and generations, but even those kind of things of certain trends that we're like, oh, my family's always done this. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I could see how it could be better. So it's all those little things, and that's probably normal, right? I mean, you attract the person that you are.
The other piece of that, then, if we look at it through the shamanic lens, different people are at different points on their intergenerational, interlife path. What is the things in Buddhism? They talk about nirvana. They talk about becoming this enlightened being, and you will find that there are many paths in different places, all to get to the same place. And in Judaism, there's the same one. And in shamanism, there's that each time you go around on the wheel, you are working on something. And it is often influenced by your own spirit path. And sometimes we hear about those things from our ancestors, both living and not living. And to you, Kevin, whether she is, grandma is now on the other side and watching and growing and learning to be a teacher, I do not know. I'd have to go ask her, which is the thing that I've done. And to find out what her path is and what she's doing.
Is that well, let me ask you, is that really even worth doing, or is following your intuition and following what you perceive to be your journey and your path, and is that more important than getting the opinion of somebody who's passed on?
Well, don't they tie into each other?
Embrace the power of and. Now, recognize that there are compassionate, healed, helping spirits, and they give you answers from that healed perspective. There are ancestors that have not done the work to become compassionate, helping spirits, and they are going to ask you to do things that they may feel have been left undone, and they have biases in there. So it depends, and you have to, ultimately, the spirits can tell you whatever they tell you, But the choice in how you interpret them and how you understand those messages and what you do with it rests with you.
Now, in her world, is that a heavy responsibility? Because sometimes she's felt like she has the weight of the world on her shoulders.
We're talking about her in the third person, and
we are.
He knows. That's okay.
All right, I'm making sure that I have your consent that get used as this model in this way, and I want to make sure that you're
Of course.
okay with it.
Kevin's my best friend. He knows more than probably anybody else in my average day-to-day life, and so I'm fine with that. It really does. Sometimes it is enlightening, though. It's exciting because only what is possible can happen, and that's not something I see negative anymore. But there is other times where I recognize and I'm aware where I do not have the control, and I have to step back and just focus on what I'm doing and how that will transcend into what I can't control. So I think it's really just, I get frustrated, if that makes sense.
For the most part, I think of control as a fiction. The only real constant is change. So control in a lot of ways is a fiction. It's what we do out of that fear. Now, to answer your question, Kevin, is this heavy? Yes, and this is why not more people do it. This is why having that internal motivation that something has happened that says this is important work to do now is done. We talk about in the process of shamanism, you'll see of going through a shamanic death. There's always a ritual for any indigenous culture where they go through a shamanic death, and there is a stripping of that which no longer serves, and it really can be a very hard cleansing that happens in your life.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we need to take a break, but before we go, I have to say this. Michelle, because you are so gifted as a social worker and a priestess and a shaman, you can approach these issues from a myriad of ways so that you can help people find their truth, whatever that truth happens to be for them. That puts you into a really, really rare category. Do you recognize that?
I do. And that was one of the things I was thinking about earlier is I used to call myself a dabbler, that I would pick up a piece here and a piece of thing there and a thing. I am an eclectic person. And one of the things about becoming a Jewish priestess is we talk about who is your teacher. And I look at the number of teachers that I get to have and all sorts of different rabbis and priestesses and scholars and shamans and clinicians. And I don't have any one particular one because there's so much knowledge out there that I just, I pull all of these things together so that I can be the most present for what the person needs.
I was going to say complete.
I think present because
we are not really complete, though, are we?
No, we are never complete.
Okay.
And we're never always at our best.
I'm getting near completion. I don't know about you anyway. But
Kevin, maybe you beat us.
No, I don't want to talk. No. Michelle's last name is
Wexelblat.
Yes, Michelle Wexelblat, which is very unique. Find her? So, yes, you can find her on social media, LinkedIn. As she said before, she's big on LinkedIn, which is Michelle Wexelblat again. And then go to her website, just because, which is therapyden.com. And we'll take this last break, but we'll try to engage as much as we can because we only have 10 minutes left. So.
Yes, and we have to say hello to our favorite Samuel. We'll be right back. Not every song changes you, but the right ones do. At Greatest Vibes Unplugged, we share music that hits deeper, no filters, no noise, just pure sound with soul. This is your reminder that light still exists, and sometimes it sings. And remember, you can look up in the sky and see the stars, but still not see the light. And And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin, and Michelle is right there. And we've got, Michelle, I've got to tell you that there's a gentleman who listens to the show with his team, and it is on Saturdays, which is tomorrow his time, and it's close to being his time now. He feeds 370, 380 children so that they do not go to bed hungry on a Saturday. And Michelle, would you like to read the message from him?
Yes. Hi, Samuel. Hi to your team. He says, greetings, Brother Kevin, Sister Rochelle, and guest Michelle. Greetings from Restoring Hope Center based in Kibera slums in Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks for hosting the guest we are watching live. And I could imagine, especially Michelle, like with your experience of working with people all over the place, I love that you've been able to be in tune with what people were born into and how they naturally learn to live, rather than trying to put everybody in this one category, because there is differences that matter when it comes to healing, and it's different for a reason. Do you agree?
Yes. Each person's journey for healing is going to take as long as it takes. This is one of the things that I have problems with the insurance industry and workman's comp and why isn't this person better already? Brief treatment, pushing to do these things quicker and faster. I had one particular person that I worked with for a year who had a very strong startle reflex, and we spent just a year getting her comfortable with reducing her startle reflex and being in therapy. We didn't really do any work otherwise.
I have never heard that term, struggle reflex. What does that mean?
Startle reflex.
Yeah, what does that mean?
You went through something that just made certain sounds or smells or things that were triggering so the startle would happen?
In this particular case, we're sitting in a room together, 12 feet apart, and every time I would uncross and recross my legs, she would jump. Anytime I made any sort of movement.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Well,
and that took a whole year.
You were able to help her, because I could imagine her whole life, that year was huge for her. And in her mind, maybe it only took a year. She wasn't seeing it from the medical perspective of, oh, it's taking a long time. To her, that was probably pretty quickly compared to living with it for so long, right?
I am not at liberty to talk more specifically about this person. That requires consent and paperwork signed. But I brought it up as a thing that trauma often has this limbic response, this how it impacts your body and your system, that you react to a number of things. And I actually found that COVID shutdown helped a lot of my people with adverse life experiences, because if home was safe, they didn't have to travel and be triggered by travel. They didn't have to come into a place where they might run into strangers and might get triggered. They didn't have all of these things they didn't have to do. The number of people that I've been working with still sitting in their beds in their comfy places, supported by all their bolsters, because I also work with people with chronic pain and injury, which is high correlation with childhood trauma, people who wind up with long-term pain injuries, pain issues. And they were much more comfortable and much more relaxed, and we made more progress.
Well, I love that you said that, because a lot of people think that trauma is only kind of on the inside, like it happens in our mind and in our hearts and in our soul, but there's a physical sense to it for sure. And me and Kevin have heard of that quite a bit more often, haven't we, Kevin?
Yeah, and stress being a major part of that, and also the energetic field that we all are, and gets clogged up, and it doesn't function the way that it's supposed to, and so that causes trouble as well, doesn't it?
I highly recommend the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh yeah, I remember you saying that.
The Body Keeps the
Score.
Right. I love triangles. I do a lot of stuff with triangles in my work. So imagine you've got this triangle where there's mind, body, and emotion, and these things need to be in balance in order to function. That if any one of those corners gets flamed, it pulls it. Think of it like the triangle. If anyone gets flamed, you wind up changing the shape of your triangle, and everything gets destabilized, whether it's physiological, mental, or emotional. I need to make it into a pyramid, because we also need to add executive function And that losing executive function can also pull all of that off if you've exhausted your executive function. The ability to make decisions, to filter information.
Michelle, I have to ask you because you do so much and you work with so many people that are, for lack of a better term, broken, or they need changes. And broken is the wrong word. I apologize
Thank
for
you.
that. And they're not broken, but they need a guidance on how to live their best life. But is that even true? Because it seems to me that working like you do, you get to work with all kinds of people with all kinds of issues. Do you ever find that this whole process is daunting, that we all have trauma that we need to move through?
Daunting? No. It's radical compassion, radical acceptance of understanding that our world is a traumatic world, and that we pick up these things because we are all carrying intergenerational trauma. As far as what you said, I want to reframe that a little bit. Is I don't teach people about all of that stuff. Yeah, I work on tool building, but what I'm trying to get to is that there is a healed, solid core of person that has not been traumatized, that a person can sink to, even if their lived world experience, they have never had this from the day that they were born. It is a gift that everyone, every spirit has, is that healed place. But we need to clear the clutter away. And that's where I'm focusing on my work right now. I will admit I am not necessarily working with people who I'm their first experience with therapy, where I have to teach those things. I'm really looking for people who are on that cusp of making that change, to be able to look into themselves and resource inside themselves. I work with a lot of healers, social workers. I do supervision, mentoring of all different sorts, life, all sorts of coaching. I also can do shamanic healing, divination. I do psychopomp work, working with the dead.
You consider yourself a teacher?
I consider myself a healer. Teaching is part of healing.
Well, and our friends over in Kenya, and Michelle, would you like to read this? Because you have inspired them.
Restoring Hope Center says, greetings, Positive Talk Radio, Kevin, Rochelle, and guest Michelle from Restoring Hope Center based in Kibera slums in Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks for hosting, Michelle. We have learned a lot, and she's inspired us a lot. Thank you for highlighting our feeding program to the world. You're our ambassadors. Kibera are tuned in. And I have to ask you, based off of all of this, Michelle, before we close out the show, do you believe that if people looked within personally and started doing more of this work and taking on what they knew they were capable of in their self to change throughout these generations for them, that it would change the generation of the way the world is and how we live?
Oh, very much so. My newest thing in doing this priestessing path is that as we heal ourselves, we heal each other. Because as you said, we're energy beings, and how we connect with people and how we treat each other. And as we heal ourselves and stop working from a place of fear, but a place of solidity in our core whole self, and treat each other from our core whole self, then we help the people around us. And then, like the old, Pantene commercial, and they told two friends, and they told two friends. And so we heal ourselves, we heal each other, and through that, we can heal the world. This is a primary fundamental piece in Judaism, is tikkun olam, healing the world. And that is at the core of my work.
Beautiful.
And is the core, because I firmly believe that we are all connected, that we are all one. And if we accepted that, as our reality, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter who you love, it doesn't matter what sex you are, that we are all together and we're all connected.
All things have spirit. All things are alive.
Yeah.
All things, everything. Imagine what would change in how we interacted with our world if we could recognize that everything is alive and everything has spirit and deserves to be treated with respect.
Yeah.
It would change everything.
It would change everything. Your computer. I mean, the shamans did a whole thing where they went and talked to the spirits of Zoom when they went to start taking their trainings online through the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. And they talked to the spirits of Zoom of how do we bring this online? What do you recommend in doing? All things are alive and all things have spirit and all deserve respect.
And by the way, Rochelle, it's time. We run out of time again. We do this all the time. It just drives me crazy. Can you take us out, please?
Yes. Well, thank you, Kevin, as always, for making this possible. Michelle, thank you so much for your time, for your healing that you've been sharing. We would love to have you back because there's no way we just talked about everything that we need to. and yes, please share any ways that people can find you, contact you, get in touch, and then any message you'd like to leave us for with the show.
I am working on setting up with a new listing for Liberatory Wellness Network. I haven't finished out their application and their description. They are very thorough in the questions that they ask, and it's going to take a couple of hours for me to go through it. But they are a place where you can find all sorts of support that's not just clinical. Therapy then is primarily social work clinical, but I can be found through direct email, which is mswexelblat@mswsquared.com. Therapy Den, LinkedIn. I answer sometimes questions on Quora. But I'm working on this, getting this new connection, this new advertising place up and running. And the thing I want to leave people with is it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you've experienced. Healing is there. And healing is possible.
And then life becomes a grand adventure.
And it's never too late. The oldest woman I helped matriculate for an undergraduate degree was 72 years old, and the oldest woman I helped start her transition was 68. It is never too late.
And Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Michelle, you've been dynamic as always. And thank everybody for being here. And we'll see you for another episode of Positive Talk. Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.